Hello, BookTube. Today I'm going to talk about the top 10 novels I've read so far in 2026. This list is composed of novels I read from the 1st of January to the 30th of June 2026. My number one and number two were immediately known to me. The placing of 3 through 7 became a little bit wonky. 8 and 9 were pretty solid, and my 10th pick was flipping and flopping. But I've settled on what I think is my 10th pick. So at number 10 is The Ghost Road by Pat Barker. This is the third novel in the Regeneration trilogy, which I completely forgot about when I bought it and read it. I have since picked up the other two novels in the trilogy and plan to read them all in 2027. So The Ghost Road is about a young officer, Billy Pryor, who in the earlier novels in the trilogy has suffered a mental breakdown while fighting in World War I. This novel sees him preparing to return to the front, and the novel also looks at a psychologist who worked on him earlier in the trilogy, Dr. Rivers, who is working with another patient throughout most of this novel, as well as flashing back to his youth and to a time as an anthropologist working on an island in the Pacific. The novel is a rich meditation in preparation for death. The Ghost Road was an amazing read. At number 9, I have selected Cloudstreet by Tim Winton. Cloudstreet is a novel set in Perth, Australia, between 1940 and 1960. It's about two families, the Pickles and the Lambs. The Pickles are a family that relies on luck. There are periods where the family live in abject poverty and periods when the family is relatively well off. At the beginning of the novel, the patriarch of the Pickles family is mutilated while working on a guano island. A relative leaves a house in Perth to him and his family, and some money which is quickly frittered away on gambling. And this forces the Pickles to rent half of the mansion to another family, the Lambs, who, unlike the Pickles, rely on diligent hard work. And so the two families kind of have an uneasy existence for much of these 20 years. However, gradually the two families begin to merge, and Cloudstreet is a wonderful evocation of mid-century Australia. I really loved reading Cloudstreet. At number 8 is Waterland by Graham Swift. This is about a teacher who is being retired. His school is, for some reason, doing away with history or the humanities or something. And on his way out, the narrator deviates from the syllabus and begins to tell his students a wild history of his home region in England, and it is amazing, just amazing. At number 7, and the first of many appearances by Alan Hollinghurst, The Swimming Pool Library. This is Hollinghurst's debut novel. It's about a 25-year-old gay man named Will Beckwith who is wealthy, independently wealthy. His grandfather, who was a wealthy man, settled his estate on his grandson in lieu of paying ruinous death duties. So Will has all the money he could ever want and no real need for a job. So he spends most of his time swimming at his club and cruising. One day while cruising, he saves the life of an elderly gay aristocrat named Lord Nantwich, and the two bond. And Nantwich, wishing to give Will something to do with his life, proposes that Will begin to write a biography of Nantwich. And so, as part of the research and encouragement to do this, Nantwich gives Will a crash course in early 20th century gay life in London and also in the UK. And it is brilliantly captured in first-person perspective. I really, really love this novel. Even the times when I don't quite get on with it as well as I would like. Because my reading tastes do jump periodically. Anyway, at number 6 is Spring Snow by Yukio Mishima, translated from the Japanese by Michael Gallagher. Spring Snow is the first of the Sea of Fertility trilogy novels. It takes place in the early 19-teens, the last year of the Meiji period and the first year of the Taisho period. It is the story of a young aristocrat named Kiyowaki, who his father, wishing for greater accomplishment in the family, has Kiyowaki fostered from a young age to a more artistically accomplished noble family. And this gives Kiyowaki a very idiosyncratic sense of beauty. And also a very love-hate relationship with the daughter of his foster parents. That eventually leads Kiyowaki to a tragic end. And the novel also focuses on Kiyowaki's best friend, Honda, who, over the course of the Sea of Fertility trilogy, becomes the lead protagonist as he looks to help the successive reincarnations of Kiyowaki over the course of the 20th century. But I love the evocation of early 20th century Tokyo and Japan in this novel. It is just wonderful. At number 5 is At Swim Two Boys by Jamie O'Neill. This is a novel that takes place again in the early, well, in this case, the mid-19-teens. The novel begins in 1915 when Jim Mack and Doyle reconnect after several years apart. Both boys' fathers were friends in the army, even though that friendship has significantly soured in the decade plus since. There is an immediate attraction between Jim and Doyle when they reconnect. And the two decide that they will make a pact, and that by next Easter, so Easter 1916, they will swim to an offshore island and claim it for Ireland. And to cement their love for one another, as that develops over the course of the novel. Unfortunately for the two, the next day or the day after is the Easter Rising, and tragedy ensues. At Swim Two Boys is an incredible, moving novel that just that ending puts me through the ringer. It was amazing. I really love this novel, and I'm so happy that I did finally get around to reading it. At number 4 is Taiwan Travelogue by Shuang-Zi, translated from the Mandarin by Lin King. Taiwan Travelogue is a very interesting novel. It is a novel that plays off being a genre of Japanese fictionalized nonfiction or nonfiction inspired fiction that's not quite autofiction. It's rather similar to, say, Master of Go by Yasunari Kawabata. So the novel presents itself as being the rediscovered manuscript and new translation of Taiwan Travelogue, which was written by a Japanese author in the I think the 50s, that told her story of when she went to Taiwan in the late 30s to write a series of travelogues for Japanese newspapers while Taiwan was under Japanese occupation. And the story focuses on the relationship between the author and her translator while they were kind of traveling around the island. And it is amazing. It's just amazing. At number 3 is The Return of Alan Hollinghurst, The Line of Beauty. This is Hollinghurst's most, I think, well-regarded novel. It is the one that won the Booker. It is set over the course of several years in the 1980s, and begins in 1983 with a young gay man named Nick Guest, who becomes the adopted pet gay of a wealthy aristocratic family called the Feddens. And over the course of the novel, Nick navigates this wealthy aristocratic political world that he is drawn to, he is attracted to, that he wants to be a part of, while also dealing with his sexuality and his various relationships. At first with a working class gay man in the 1983, and then in the later sections in 1986 and 87 with a wealthy classmate of his. And just how Hollinghurst navigates both Nick's fascination and obsession with wealth and the beautiful things that wealth can provide, as well as navigating the 1980s London gay scene is brilliant. I just really love The Line of Beauty, and I'm very happy that I finally managed to read it. At number 2 is The Remembered Soldier by Anjet Daanje, translated from the Dutch by David McCay. The Remembered Soldier is set in the 1920s, about a half decade after the end of World War II. It's about an amnesiac veteran known as Noon Markham, because he was found wandering the battlefield of Markham in its aftermath. He is amnesiac. He does not know who he is. So in the half decade since the end of World War I, he has traveled from various hospitals and asylums and being cared for by those institutions. At the beginning of the novel, the asylum where he is currently housed advertises to see if anybody could recognize him. And one day, a woman comes, Julian Coppens, to claim him as her husband. And the monks at the institution bring him home, allow him to travel with her to their home. And what follows is the reintegration of Noon into the life of Amand Coppens, a photographer. However, gradually, holes begin to form in Julian's story that raises questions about the veracity of anything that she says. And gradually, Amand begins to remember who he is. And at the end, he must decide who he wants to be. And it's amazing, just amazing. And finally, my number one is The Folding Star by Alan Hollinghurst. This is his second novel. It is about a gay man, Edward Manners, who moves to a small city in Belgium to privately teach or tutor in English for two wealthy students, one of whom he falls in love with, and the other one whose life he becomes entangled with as he sort of becomes a recurrent visitor to and eventually employee assistant to the boy's father. And it is just an amazing study of obsession and desire and chaos, and it is absolutely amazing. I think Alan Hollinghurst is an amazing writer, particularly when he writes in the first person. And The Folding Star is the best example of that. It is just an amazing novel. So, those were the top 10 novels that I've read so far in 2026. I will be back in December. Well, I'll be back, many times before December. But I will do a top 10 for the second half of 2026. So July through to December, a top 10. And then I will also do a combined list of the top 10 books that I have read, or novels that I have read in 2026. So look forward to that. And and hopefully I will be back tomorrow with a tag video. So until then, BookTube, thank you and have a great day.